Good evening. I would like to call the Bellbrook City Council meeting for November 27, 2017 to order. Would everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Mr. Edwards?
Here.
Mr. Greenwood?
Here.
Mr. McGill?
Here.
Mrs. Middlestetter?
Here.
Mrs. Seeger-Lawson?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Schweller?
Here.
Mayor Baird?
Here. Formal approval of the City Council work session and regular meeting minutes of November 13, 2017. Does any member on council have any corrections or additions to the regular City Council meeting minutes of our last meeting?
None, Mayor.
Seeing none, the minutes are approved as written. Mayor's announcements. We only have one thing this evening. I'd like to welcome Mr. Joe Braden from the Regional Liaison's Office of the Auditor of the State of Ohio. Welcome. Thank you very much for coming out this evening.
I am really happy to be here today. It's always fun to come out and give awards to cities and municipalities, so it's my honor to be here tonight on behalf of the Auditor State Dave Yost, to present the City of Bellbrook with the Auditor State Award for the 2016 fiscal audit period. It's important to note that this puts the City of Bellbrook in a very unique group. The Auditor State's audits nearly 6,000 entities, and less than 10% of them are even eligible for this award. The Auditor State Award is presented to local governments and school districts upon the completion of the financial audit that meet the following criteria. I want to kind of read through this so you guys know what Mark goes through to and his crew to make this happen each year. The entity must file their financial reports with the Auditor State within 150 days of fiscal year end, must have a clean audit with no finding for recoveries, no material citations, material weaknesses, no significant deficiencies, any single audit findings, or any questioned costs. The entity's management letter must contain no comments related to ethics referrals, any questioned costs less than $10,000, any lack of timely report submissions, reconciliation issues, failure to obtain a timely single audit, findings for recovery, and any public meetings or public records issues. The entity should have no other financial concerns either. This award also represents the hard work of all of your city employees that strive each day to achieve accounting excellence. I also want to recognize the mayor and all the council members that have done an excellent job in accounting for every dollar here in the City of Bellbrook and all their departments. And I especially want to recognize, if you want to come down here for a second, Mark, recognize Mark for his outstanding leadership, professionalism, and commitment to fiscal integrity. Job well done, Mark. Thank you. On behalf of Auditor State Dave Yost, I'd like to present the Auditor State Award with distinction. So, congratulations.
Thank you very much. Good job.
I would like to thank Mr. Braden for coming out this evening. It's great to see you come out. And I also want to thank Mr. Schlagheck. Mr. Schlagheck, as most of you know or maybe don't know, and I really can't say it enough, is not only our city manager but our finance director. It's rare to have a gentleman who has a CPA, also has an MBA, and can do both those jobs. And it really is beneficial to our residents to have all that in one, and it really saves the residents money. So thank you for coming all the way from St. Paris, Ohio, and thank you very much, Mr. Schlagheck.
Thank you.
Right.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you.
That is all I have for mayor's announcements. Public hearings of ordinances. Ordinance 2017-11. Mrs. Seeger-Lawson.
Ordinance number 2017-11. An ordinance amending Chapter 1454, Registration of Abandoned Properties of Bellbrook Municipal Code. Whereas the City of Bellbrook has enacted Chapter 1454 of the Bellbrook Municipal Code, which is entitled Registration of Abandoned Properties, and whereas the purpose of Chapter 1454 is to protect the peace, health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of Bellbrook, and whereas the city desires to amend Chapter 1454 of the Bellbrook Municipal Code to allow for the assessment of civil penalties for violations. Now therefore, the City of Bellbrook hereby ordains, Section 1, that the following amendments to Chapter 1454, Registration of Abandoned Properties of the Bellbrook Municipal Code be approved with additions shown by italics and underline and deletions shown by strike-through and brackets. Section 1454.04, Violations and Penalties. Section A, whoever violates any provision of this code has committed a civil offense and is subject to civil penalties. That's what it says now. There are several strikeouts in that section. Section B now says, when a civil offense has occurred, the following amounts are hereby assessed upon the violator. 1, a first offense shall be $25 per day per offense, or $250 per offense total. 2, a second offense shall be $50 per day per offense, or $500 per offense total. 3, a third offense shall be $75 per day per offense, or $750 per offense total. Section 2, that this ordinance shall take effect and be enforced from and after the earliest period provided by law.
Yes, this ordinance, along with several that we've done this year, amends the abandoned property registration to make it, rather than a criminal misdemeanor for noncompliance, it makes it a civil offense, which allows us to put a lien on the property. In most cases, for these abandoned properties, it's a bank-owned, or it's somebody not a resident that owns these properties. It's very difficult to criminally charge a corporation or a bank or somebody who's out of state, anything like that. What this allows us to do is, if they do not comply with the abandoned properties registration, we can assess a civil penalty, and ultimately, if that civil penalty is not paid, then we can put a lien on the property. With these abandoned and foreclosed properties, ultimately, through the title changing process, we'll get that money if there is a lien on that property. But this is just more realistic of a way for us to penalize somebody for not complying with this section of the code.
Does anyone have any questions for our city manager? I know we've discussed this a couple times.
I just have a question, Mark. I think we've got some outstanding issues with compliance on property maintenance things. Is this, will they be grandfathered under, I know there's probably some lawsuits out there, I guess. Or
If there's existing issues out there, they won't be subject to the civil penalties
Okay,
until there's a new offense.
no offense.
Or it's considered to be a new offense. If that case runs its course, but then they come back and then are not compliant again with it in the future, then we could use the civil penalties. And the same, there are a number of these, we don't have very many, but there's a couple of abandoned properties that we've already notified.
Right.
We've done those things to get them to register. They won't necessarily be subject to this, but anyone in the future that does not comply with this would be subject to the civil penalties.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to make that clear. So whatever's out there now, that'll run its course and then,
Yes.
okay.
Yep.
Do we have any other questions? This is a public hearing, so. Seeing none from council and seeing a little bear this evening in the audience, unless Louis would like to say something, I will call this public hearing closed. May I have a motion to approve ordinance number 2017-11?
I move that we approve ordinance number 2017-11.
May I have a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Motion by Mrs. Seeger Lawson to adopt ordinance number 2017-11, an ordinance amending Chapter 1454, registration of abandoned properties of the Bellbrook Municipal Code, seconded by Mr. McGill. Mrs. Seeger Lawson?
Yes.
Mr. McGill?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Greenwood?
Yes.
Mrs. Middlestetter?
yes,
Mr. Schweller?
Yes.
Mayor Baird?
Yes, that is all we have for public hearings of ordinances this evening. We do have a couple introduction of ordinances. We'll start with ordinance number 2017-12. Mr. McGill.
Thank you, Mayor. Ordinance number 2017-12, an ordinance amending Chapter 1010, curb cuts of the Bellbrook Municipal Code. Whereas the City of Bellbrook has enacted Chapter 1010 of the Bellbrook Municipal Code, which is entitled Curb Cuts, and whereas the purpose of Chapter 1010 is to protect the peace, health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of Bellbrook, and whereas the city desires to amend Chapter 1010 of the Bellbrook Municipal Code to clarify the process for obtaining a curb cut permit. Now, therefore, the City of Bellbrook hereby ordains, Section 1, that the following amendments to Chapter 1010 curb cuts of the Bellbrook Municipal Code be approved, with additions shown by italics and underline, and deletions shown by strike-through and brackets. Section 1010.01 is now definitions, and their old language has been stricken out. New language included is, as used in this section, in paren A, driveway means an area on private property for the accommodation of automobiles, trucks, or other vehicles coming from or entering a public street. In paren B, driveway approach curb cut means an area, construction, or facility between the traveled portion of the public street or right-of-way and private property intended to provide access for vehicles from the traveled portion of the public street or right-of-way to private property. In section 10.02, there's strike through and change in language. Now it reads, permit required. No person, corporation, or firm other than an authorized employee of city shall construct a driveway approach connecting a public street or right-of-way or cut, break out, or remove any curb along any street or other public way without first obtaining a driveway approach curb cut permit. The city manager, city manager, or his designate, may require such construction plans or drawings with the permit application as he deems necessary to, in paren A, permit all reviewing authorities to make intelligent and conclusive review of the application. Paren B, enable the contractor to construct the proposed facility in accordance with the terms of the permit. In paren C, enable the individual responsible for inspection to ensure that the facility is constructed in accordance with the terms of the permit. And paren D, serve as a record of construction authorized by the permit. In section 10.03, this is a new section, is an amended section for fees, striking the old language. Fees for driveway approach curb cut permits are hereby established as follows. Residential property, $10. Commercial property, $25. In section, there's new section added for section 10.04, restrictions on construction. The city manager or his designee may impose conditions in the permit upon the construction of the driveway approach curb cut, which conditions are designed to facilitate the safe movement of pedestrian traffic and the safe and expeditious movement of motor vehicles on the public streets or ways affected by the driveway approaches curb cut. The conditions imposed upon the driveway approaches curb cuts by the city manager or his designee under this section may include but are not limited to the following. In paren A, limitations of the number of size and location driveway approaches curb cuts for any premises to which the permit applies. In paren B, requiring the use of alternative means of access such as service or private drives rather than direct connection to the public street or way which such alternate means are accessible to the premises to which the permit applies, and or requiring that direct connection or the driveway approach or curb cuts to the public street or way be limited and used only until alternative means for access such as service or private drives are made accessible to the premises. In new paren C, limiting the construction of driveway approach or curb cuts to only one public street or way where the premises to which the permit applies abuts more than one public street or way. In new paren D, requiring that the driveway approach curb cuts be marked and are constructed to allow only entrance to or only exit from the permit premises. In paren E, requiring the construction of safety islands to separate two driveway approaches and curb cuts. Paren F, requiring the construction of a right-hand or left-hand deceleration, acceleration, and or storage lanes and the appropriate traffic control devices, including but not limited to signals as necessary. In paren G, requiring the construction of driveway turnaround facilities so that vehicular traffic can change direction on the permit premises and enter the roadway in a forward direction. In section 10.99 penalty, there is a strikeout of some language, and the new language includes, it's added, whoever violates or fails to comply with the provisions of this chapter has committed a civil offense and is subject to civil penalties. A separate offense shall be deemed committed each day during or on which a violation of noncompliance occurs or continues. When a civil offense has occurred, the following amounts are hereby assessed upon the violator. In paren 1, a first offense shall be $25 per day per offense, or $250 total per offense total. In paren 2, a second offense shall be $50 per day per offense, or $500 per offense total. And in paren 3, a third offense shall be $75 per day per offense, or $750 per offense total. Section 2, this ordinance shall take effect and be enforced from and after the earliest period provided by law.
Yes, the existing section of the code for curb cuts was a little more limited, but the primary thing that it did was designate the chief of police as the person to seek permission from when you wanted a curb cut or a curb expansion. We don't have a lot of these, but that just didn't seem appropriate that the chief of police would be the one to make those decisions. There are aspects where they would be consulted in terms of the location and traffic and things like that. What this does is take this back, and we'll have a permit process through our regular zoning process, that if somebody wants a curb cut or a curb expansion, they'll come through us. We will then talk with the service director, the chief of police, whoever is appropriate to get their input on this, but it'll be handled here by the zoning department within the administrative offices.
Any questions on the council?
Mark, is there any provisions for like a temporary, not necessarily a permanent driveway, like someone has a party or where they open up a field for, is that
Not-
something they should maybe contact the police or something? Or-
Yeah, I mean, if they want to do something like that, if they're going to use a field, if it's their property and they're able to use that, or they have permission to do that, then they contact the police to let them know that that's what it's being used for on a temporary basis. This section here is really more on the permanent basis, if you're going to
Right.
get access to a piece of property that maybe doesn't have access currently, or you're going to add an additional access to it.
And maybe another circumstance might be construction or something.
Right.
Temporary.
Temporary. Again, we don't have a whole lot of either one of those situations, and we really don't have a lot of curb cuts. Every once in a while, we'll get somebody who wants to expand their driveway, and that's what this applies to. If they want a little wider driveway, we'll look at that and make sure that it doesn't encroach on stormwater drainage or do anything like that.
And it's no longer a misdemeanor.
Right, because again,
It makes-
yeah, we're not going to
Moving
criminally
from
prosecute
criminal to-
somebody for expanding their driveway or doing something like that, but
Right.
this actually probably gives us a little more teeth. If somebody did do something that was not allowed, we could give them a civil offense.
Makes more sense to be civil in the first place.
Right.
Any other questions for our city manager? Seeing none, may I have a motion to introduce ordinance number 2017-12?
I so moved that the city take and entertain as a motion.
May I have a second? Oh,
I'll second it.
and roll call.
Motion by Mr. McGill to introduce ordinance number 2017-12, an ordinance amending Chapter 1010, curb cuts of the Bellbrook Municipal Code, seconded by Mrs. Middlestetter. Mr. McGill?
Yes.
Mrs. Middlestetter?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Greenwood?
Yes.
Mrs. Seeger Lawson?
Yes.
Mr. Schweller?
Yes.
Mayor Baird?
Yes. Moving on, ordinance number 2017-13. Mr. Edwards.
Thank you, Mayor. Ordinance number 2017-13, an ordinance amending ordinances 2016-14 and 2017-6 to adjust the City of Bellbrook appropriations for 2017 to reflect additional costs in some line items and reduce costs in other line items. Whereas the City of Bellbrook adopted a 2017 annual budget based on the best information available at the time, and whereas additional costs have or will occur in some line items and reduced costs are projected in other line items, which requires the amendment of various appropriation levels. Now therefore, the City of Bellbrook hereby ordains, Section 1, that the 2017 appropriation levels and several of the funds listed below be amended as follows. In the body of the ordinance are a list of the funds divided between a general fund and other funds. And there's three categories: personal services, other expenses, and supplemental appropriations. The total of all grand fund, the grand total of all funds is to have the appropriations reduced $15,275 under personal services, reduced by $1,023,591 in other expenses, for a total reduction in supplemental appropriations of $1,038 or $38,866. Section 2 of this ordinance shall take effect and be enforced from and after the earliest period provided by law.
Yes, this is the amending the 2017 appropriations. This is the second amendment to that. We did one earlier this year. The significant amount of the decrease, over $1 million, the majority of that is from the deferment of the Upper Hillside project until 2018. That water main project is out to bid right now, but it will actually go under contract in 2018. So that was about $1,040,000 that was budgeted. Will actually just be rolled into 2018. The grant and loan source of $890,000 will also be rolled into the 2018 budget. The other items are primarily just housekeeping measures throughout the year. We have different items that come up, other items that we choose not to do for one reason or other, and this sort of cleans that up and gets us set for the end of the year.
Any questions for our city manager? Seeing none, may I have a motion to introduce ordinance number 2017-13?
I'll make a motion to introduce ordinance number 2017-13.
Second.
And roll call.
Motion by Mr. Edwards to introduce ordinance number 2017-13, and ordinance amending ordinances 2016-14 and 2017-6 to adjust the City of Bellbrook appropriations for 2017 to reflect additional cost in some line items and reduced cost in other line items, seconded by Mr. Schweller. Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Schweller?
Yes.
Mr. Greenwood?
Yes.
Mr. McGill?
Yes.
Mrs. Middlestetter?
Yes.
Mrs. Seeger Lawson?
Yes.
Mayor Baird?
Yes. One more introduction this evening, ordinance number 2017-14. Mr. Schweller.
Thank you, Mayor. Ordinance 2017-14, an ordinance approving the appropriations of the City of Bellbrook for the fiscal year ending December 31, 2018. Whereas the City Council has reviewed the proposed 2018 annual budget, and whereas the City of Bellbrook desires to adopt the 2018 annual budget and authorize the related appropriations, now therefore the City of Bellbrook hereby ordains, Section 1, that to provide for the current expenses and other expenditures of the City of Bellbrook during the fiscal year ending December 31, 2018, the following sums be, and they are hereby set aside to be appropriated as follows. In the body of the resolution is a breakout by the individual funds. We'll read the totals for the professional or personal services, other expenses, and transfers. In the 2018 budget includes $3,822,070 for personal services, other expenses in the amount of $3,326,196, and transfers of $550,000 for a grand total of 2018 appropriations, $7,698,266. Section 2, that the finance director is hereby authorized to make payments from any of the foregoing appropriations upon receiving proper documentation approved by the officers authorized by law to approve the same. Section 3, this ordinance shall take effect and be enforced from and after the earliest period provided by law. And again, this is our 2018 budget, and I think we're going to have a presentation at the December 11th meeting of
Correct.
all the detailed and colored slides, and we look forward to it.
Always do, yes.
Any questions on council? I know we've had, how many meetings, Mr. Schlagheck?
Three so far, yeah.
3, so we've spent numerous hours on this, so. With that, may I have a motion to introduce ordinance number 2017-14?
Mayor, I'd like to move the introduction of ordinance 2017-14.
May I have a second?
I'll second.
And roll call.
Motion by Mr. Schweller to introduce ordinance number 2017-14, an ordinance approving the appropriations of the City of Bellbrook for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2018, seconded by Mr. Edwards. Mr. Schweller?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Greenwood?
Yes.
Mr. McGill?
Yes.
Mrs. Middlestetter?
Yes.
Mrs. Seeger Lawson?
Yes.
Mayor Baird?
Yes. That is all we have for introduction of ordinance this evening. We do have a couple of resolutions. We'll start with Resolution 2017-EE. Mr. Greenwood.
Thank you, Mayor. Resolution number 2017-EE, a resolution establishing the fees charged for emergency medical transport services. Whereas the City of Bellbrook has charged a fee for emergency medical transport fees since 2002, and whereas Section 246.01 of the Bellbrook Municipal Code authorizes the city to charge the usual, reasonable, and customary charges currently prevailing in this region for these services, and whereas the fees collected for emergency medical services only cover a portion of the overall cost to provide these services, and whereas the city has contracted with AccuMed to bill for emergency medical transport fees effective January 1, 2018. Now therefore, the city of Bellbrook hereby resolves that Section 1, that pursuant to Section 246.01 of the Bellbrook Municipal Code, the city manager is hereby authorized to charge fees for emergency medical transport services as follows. Basic life support, non-emergency is $400. Basic life support emergency is $550. Advanced life support non-emergency is $600. Advanced life support emergency is $850. And advanced life support 2 is $1,050. And mileage is $13 per mile. Section 2, that this resolution shall take effect January 1, 2018.
Yeah, the city has, for 15 years now, charged for emergency medical transport services. A number of these fees have been in place. Really, the two additional ones are the non-emergency, the basic life support non-emergency, and the advanced life support non-emergency. A lot of this goes back to Medicare, Medicaid billing. We're billing insurance companies. They will pay based on different levels of service. Those two fees we have not had in place, but they will reimburse on a non-emergency call if we go lights and sirens to the hospital versus an emergency call differently. So with the changing of our billing company to Acumed, they reviewed our rate structure. They recommended that we add these two billing rates into here in addition to the rates that we already had for insurance reimbursement purposes.
Any questions?
I just think one of the key things it says here is this only covers a portion of the actual cost when you send an ambulance to pick somebody up. So
And Bellbrook we do soft billing. So in other words, if you are a Bellbrook resident, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think when people read this, they think that we're charging our citizens that are already paying for this with property taxes. That is not correct. It is, we are billing their insurance companies when they use emergency services, and that does help finance the EMS and fire department. So they would go after those fees from the either Medicaid or Medicare, I would assume.
Private insurance.
And or private insurance, and that's what this does, and we've been doing it along with virtually every other city in the region. The only exceptions to that would be if our EMTs were out assisting someone else and or on another call, and we only have one on duty, then another Washington Township or Sugar Creek Township mutual aid response, they would come into Bellbrook and also charge their fees.
Correct.
So.
And we think our fees are in line with other people's.
Yes, we've reviewed those a couple years ago, and they're in line with most of the other agencies in this area. So it's just adding the non-emergency ones.
Any other questions on council? Seeing none, may I have a motion to adopt?
yes, Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to adopt resolution number 2017-EE.
May I have a second?
Second.
And roll call.
Motion by Mr. Greenwood to adopt Resolution 2017-EE, a resolution establishing the fees charged for emergency medical transport services, seconded by Mr. McGill. Mr. Greenwood?
Yes.
Mr. McGill?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mrs. Middlestetter?
Yes.
Mrs. Seeger Lawson?
Yes.
Mr. Schweller?
Yes.
Mayor Baird?
Yes. Resolution 2017-FF. I do see on here, this is Key Bank, and I guess before I move forward, I'm going to venture to guess, Mr. Edwards?
Yes, I'll need to recuse myself from the discussion tonight.
Okay. You're so recused. With that, Resolution 2017-FF, Mrs. Middlestetter?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Resolution number 2017-FF, a resolution authorizing Robert Baird, Mayor of the City of Bellbrook, and Michael Schweller, Deputy Mayor of the City of Bellbrook, to execute an officer's certification for Key Bank. Whereas the City of Bellbrook desires to utilize a purchasing card program offered by the Key Bank, and whereas Key Bank requires an officer's certification to be executed that names Mark Schlagheck, City Manager, as the authorized person to execute and deliver the documents related to this purchasing card program. Now therefore, the City of Bellbrook hereby resolves Section 1, Robert Beard as mayor of the city of Bellbrook and Michael Schweller, deputy mayor of the city of Bellbrook, are hereby authorized to execute an officer's certification attached hereto with Key Bank. Section 2, that this resolution shall take effect and be enforced forthwith. Mayor.
So I think the only industry that has more regulations than government is banking at times. So basically what this officer certification allows me to sign documents on behalf of the city to get purchasing cards. Right now, just so you know, the city has a single credit card that we use. It actually is the City of Bellbrook with my name on it. We use it to make purchases online where necessary. We don't use it very often, but there are certain things that are just cost effective to do online. The purchasing card program, and this sort of came out of our audit with the state. They recommended a credit card policy. When you start looking at policies, it really comes down to who controls the cards and who has access to them. What the purchasing cards will, for no additional fee, we can have a card with the individual's names that we want to have on there. So the chief of police, the service director can have their own card. They can use it as appropriate. They'll be responsible for the receipts to get to us to reconcile. We'll have just a much more robust way to track those and to make sure who's using the card, what they're using it for. Probably won't really change what we use it for, but it does give us a little bit more control over the cards. And if one card is lost, we don't lose access to the account until we get a new card. It's there. So, but what this does is just allows, by having the mayor and deputy mayor sign, then I can sign the rest of the documents authorizing this account.
Any questions on council? I know from a corporate side, we went to this system a long time ago. There's a lot more checks and balances with this. Also, you're potentially covered with potential issues of fraud and things like that regarding your card getting caught in a scanner or scam.
Scam.
No,
Or
the
skimmers.
Skimmers. So, so with that, do I have a motion to adopt resolution 2017-FF?
Yes, I move to adopt resolution number 2017-FF.
May I have a second?
A second.
And roll call.
Motion by Mrs. Middlestetter to adopt Resolution 2017-FF, a resolution authorizing Robert Baird, Mayor of the City of Bellbrook, and Michael Schweller, Deputy Mayor of the City of Bellbrook, to execute an officer's certification for Key Bank, seconded by Mrs. Seeger Lawson. Mrs. Middlestetter?
Yes.
Mrs. Seeger Lawson?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards recused himself. Mr. Greenwood?
Yes.
Mr. McGill?
Yes.
Mr. Schweller?
Yes.
Mayor Baird?
Yes. Moving on, that is all the resolutions we have this evening. May I, Mr. Edwards, nice to see you back. Thank you. City manager's report.
Yes, at the last meeting, we talked about medical marijuana and the dispensaries that are currently being, people are seeking license for in the state of Ohio. And I just wanted to give council a little bit more information. As I looked into this, within the law itself, it states that a medical marijuana dispensary cannot be within 500 feet of any school, church, public library, public playground, or public park. And then also the city may adopt an ordinance to prohibit it. So I went and just to try to get a sense of where this could be. This is the downtown area, so I centered this on the library and 500 feet. So if you look at that, it pretty much takes care of everything in the western side of downtown. If you look on this one and you take the school, it pretty much takes care of the rest of downtown there. So pretty much the downtown area would not be permitted. If you go out to the west end of town, the closest daycare that I could find, I think there's one on North Lakeman, I know, but really this opens up, and there's a church down here on Wilmington, but none of them really capture this area on Wilmington here where Discount Drug Mart is and El Toro, Skyline. That would probably be the one place potentially that they could locate, and they wouldn't be restricted at least by the state law. So if we wanted to restrict so that they couldn't go here, we can simply introduce and pass an ordinance that would say that they can't be within the city of Bellbrook in any way, shape, or form. Looking at our zoning code doesn't really address this. It would just be a retail operation, and again, all this area would be considered retail, so it would be no different than that. So if council wants me to move forward, we can introduce.
There's a daycare there, though, right down the corner. corner, right? Wilmington and Alex Bell? Because that's where my kids
Yeah, but
used
it's
to
probably not 500 feet.
Wilmington. and
Primrose down
Yeah,
there?
Yeah, Primrose.
Yeah, it's hard on the Greene County map because that's actually Montgomery County.
Yeah, that's Montgomery County.
But I think I did that, so if I
Well,
chose.
it's not public though, I guess. right?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. I did that, it's within question. It probably doesn't reach to the El Toro, or that shopping plaza, or where the flooring place is. It could be in the middle there. So if anywhere, it would be that.
Okay.
And if, somebody could put a daycare in any one of those places, or a church. I mean, churches can be in any number of places, so, I mean, it could be anything. But right now, that would be the only place that I could conceivably see that it would be. So if you want, I will come back with an ordinance at the next meeting to introduce to amend our code to completely prohibit them, or we let it stand, and this would be the only place if they chose. Again, I don't really think there's a strong possibility that it's fairly far off. The interstate is not really on the beaten path. If there's only three, or there's only going to be one in Greene, Fayette, and whatever, the Union County, whatever I think is what the three were. There's only one dispensary in that area. So it's up to council if you want me to do that, or.
Nick,
I think we just sit tight for right now.
Yeah.
Forrest,
I'm fine the way it is.
Stay.
Stay put.
Donna.
I'm not sure what the legislation would look like. What would it, I mean, it would say that you,
There's a
Yeah,
bunch
but
of them
then,
out there.
It's literally like a sentence. I tried to find some, but it's,
A lot of cities have done it.
yeah, I have,
So township, can they pass ordinance? I'm assuming
Yes.
they cannot? Oh,
no, they can, because it can be resolution.
Oh, okay.
It may adopt a resolution to prohibit or limit the number of cultivated, processed, or retail. And like I found, like the city of Powell, it's like 2 sentences. Who else did I find here?
I guess if it's an ordinance that we would have to do, then we'd have to do an introduction and then hear it and then approve it. When was this all gonna be out?
They won't grant the license, I don't think, until September of 2018.
Okay, well,
So,
I'd maybe get some more information before, because we'll have plenty of time to do it after that, and it's sort of, they're not complicated.
no, it's not complicated. The only question would be is if they granted a license to somebody in Bellbrook before we enacted the ordinance. I don't know that we can come back after the
Oh,
fact
okay.
and.
Yeah.
and-
You don't know when they're gonna grant those then.
Well, I think it's September of 2018. Well, I mean, but we would have to have it in place before then. We
Yes.
can't wait till they grant them and then come back to do it, I guess. So it's either we decide that we don't want them, we put the prohibition in place and we don't run the risk of that, or we decide that if they come in and they choose Bellbrook, then they'll be in that, potentially in that strip as the only place they can be in the city of Bellbrook, and we're fine with that.
Is there any anticipated problems with a dispensary like that? I mean, I'm not
I
familiar.
talked to the chief of police. I mean, he's not overly concerned about it. It's a retail dispensary. Could you have some increased traffic? Obviously, traffic would probably be the biggest thing, honestly. There's the risk of theft, but I think it's a non-cash business, I believe is what it has to be. It is not marijuana that can be smoked. That is not permitted under the Ohio Revised Code, so it's not that. So, but it's a type of business that potentially would attract people who maybe don't know all those things and are going to be around. But he does not have any significant concerns. Probably traffic. If we're the only one in a 3-county area, if there's only 60 in the state, there's going to be additional traffic.
I think it's okay over there. I mean, it's kind of a good location from our standpoint, except it's at the edge of the city. And I would hate to have to think we'd have to be stepping up patrols to cover that small segment without being able to keep the officers in the greater part of the city's really concerned
Right, they would
about
be
it.
at the.
I'd probably be
They're by
more
themselves
concerned
and
about
dead
the
end kind of-
traffic, potentially, literally.
Who else has done has anybody done moratoriums or?
I was trying to, it's not easy. There's a lot of them that have done moratoriums and/or outright bans.
Okay.
But there are, I don't have the exact count. It's hard to track that down necessarily, but I know a lot of communities initially did the moratorium because they didn't know enough
Right.
to do anything. it didn't really make a whole lot of sense knowing that the time frame was such that nothing was gonna happen immediately anyway, but
Yeah.
that was the immediate reaction, and,
You know, since our neighbor that side would be Centerville, do we know what they've done?
I know they had a moratorium. I don't know if they've officially enacted a prohibition on it or not. I believe Washington Township has enacted a prohibition. Montgomery County, I believe, gets 3 dispensaries within the county, so.
Yeah, my other concern is the location. It's so far kind of remote in the county, in the city, and I hate to think that we'd have to have a substantial police presence there, which costs a lot of money to have a cop, you know, kind of on site or in that area versus in downtown, which is more central.
Right.
I kind of would like to see the legislation. I mean, if we enacted something, what would it say and what would it do? Just because I'm not sure that if everybody else has already done a moratorium or already said it was a prohibition, I don't want us to be left as the only city that has an opportunity to.
How about just bring an example of one and see if the National League of Cities or someone has already done the footwork on who's done it, someone
Well, yeah, I mean,
as far as.
I'm looking at the city of Powell's because I found that one, and it literally defines medical marijuana, and it says the cultivation, processing, or retail dispensing of medical marijuana within the city of Powell is hereby prohibited. And that's literally what, I mean, it's a couple paragraphs is all it is, and the same for the city of Blue Ash. That was the other resolution or ordinance that I was able to find. It's the same language, so it's like 3 sections of it. I'm assuming that it probably, somebody did the research to find out what it needed to say. So that's all it takes. I mean, because in most cases, when you pass the law, you have to be careful about what you restrict and things like this. In this case, the state did all entities, all local governments a favor and said, you're allowed to prohibit this. Most cases, we have to do something above and beyond to say, okay, we don't want this, and the state says you can have it, but we don't want it. In this case, they said, you can make the decision locally whether you want it or not. So that's really, I mean, all it has to be is a single sentence. We don't have to amend the zoning code. We don't have to come up with the reasons why we want to do it. It's just a matter of, we don't want it in our community, and it's a simple sentence that accomplishes that. So.
I would be concerned about traffic. I would be concerned about police presence. I'd be concerned about burglaries, or even just other people coming in trying to buy it when they aren't certified. And I just think that's probably that's not what I want in my community.
Or what about the people who do need it, the medical people? Yeah.
Then that's 1 out of 3 counties, then they could.
Well, I think
Someone-
one is the likelihood, so it's one of those questions, if you, and of course, it's gonna be a public hearing, it'll be an ordinance. So I'm pretty sure all those pros and cons would be addressed. I think the question now is, where are we at with it? The likelihood is probably not very high. But if council's adamant that they don't want it, then now's probably the time to go ahead and address it. That would be my opinion. So I think last time it was pretty much didn't want to see it here, but you all can correct me if I'm wrong, so I'm not sure. So, I mean, the only thing now is it's probably very unlikely, but.
I still think we sit tight on it. I mean,
Okay.
we have Drug Mart there that sells controlled substances, that probably more of a problem, people going in and out of there trying to.
Well, the security is going to be mandated, and but.
Do we know how big these dispensaries are gonna be, or do they give square footage, or?
I don't know. There are very specific requirements, but I did not.
I would just think they're probably bigger than most of the spaces in that shopping center, except for a couple, unless they combine several together or something. Maybe Drug Mart or whatever, but I would think it'd have to be something with
Well,
some
in
decent footprint.
the landlords of those buildings would also have to agree to have such a tenant in there, and they may get pushback from the other tenants that are there
Yeah,
that
that's a good
say,
point.
and right now, there's not many vacancies in those buildings, with the exception of next to the flooring place, where the interior design place was, that's vacant. Again, I don't know that meets the requirements, but,
This isn't a place where they grow them, right?
no.
No,
It's just dispensary of them already
Just retail
processed.
stuff.
where they
for
sell it,
use.
essentially. AK, you go pick it up, probably have to purchase and have a ticket or something in advance, one would assume, because there's no cash to be exchanged.
I'm just trying to see if it has any.
Isn't that a liquid form?
I am no expert whatsoever on it.
They have to apply to the pharmacy board, so it's not part of the liquor at all.
But,
It's-
No, I
I mean,
meant
liquid as
the
far
actual-
as,
The substance.
Yeah, I think it's extract and it's,
Extract.
edible and things like that.
I think they do with the square footage though.
so,
Well,
let-
if we had a public hearing though, then we would hear from the community and we would know whether they wanted that in their community or not, right?
I would assume that you would get some, probably on both sides.
Right, yeah.
I think the real issue here is, do you want to go through those steps just to know, since the likelihood is probably very, very
It's all
small?
hypothetical that it could even happen.
It's very, very
That's true.
hypothetical, but, I mean, that's maybe, I don't know what the other cities have done on it completely. I don't know, you're gonna have, Xenia would be a good one to know, obviously, we know what Yellow Springs has probably done. So it's up to you on what you want to
And
do.
there's only one for Greene County?
There's 4 in,
There's one, we're with Greene, Fayette, and Union counties is a 3-county area, and there's one within those 3 counties.
Oh, it's not.
And see, this would be
Yeah,
the
it's not
absolute,
gonna come here.
this would be the absolute edge of the county too, so it's
Yeah,
kind of,
I'd say
it's
probably-
bad from us from the standpoint.
So, I mean,
it's a
it's-
small corner city, but it's
the,
also.
the absolute worst case scenario is if you really don't want it and they come in. And, you're not, we're not prepared. Now, it's not gonna come out till September, so maybe do a little more research, and then in May, we would have to move forward.
The only thing it says within the application documentation, this is required for them to submit documentation describing the adequacy of the size of the proposed dispensary to serve the needs of patients and caregivers, including without limitation, building and construction plans with supporting details. Such plans shall illustrate at a minimum the size and location of the following within the prospective dispensary location: the dispensary department, restricted access areas, waiting room, and patient care areas or other areas designated for patient and caregiver consultation and instruction. So it's not going to be just a little, storefront.
Right.
Strip
You
mall.
you have to
Yeah,
have
that's
all
what I was
those.
thinking, it's supposed to be something big.
And then it goes on to talk about security
Decent
and.
footprint, yeah.
Right, so, again, I don't know if any of those, if there's a
You got the
location
other,
even that
you got
needs
the
it.
other office building where the vet is and
Mhm.
that stuff,
There'd
right?
have to
Well,
be
the-
several offices combined, I would think, just
Yes.
something major.
15
Well, there's an office building right behind my house that's for sale though, it's been for sale for a while.
You got a school.
But you're
Got
probably
church
within
next
500 feet
door.
of
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stevensville there,
Yeah.
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 But yes, that would be.
All right, let's do this one more, and we can reopen it at a later time. Mr. Edwards,
Let's just sit tight and not do anything.
Nick,
I'm good with the way it is.
okay,
Stay the course.
Stay the course.
okay.
I'm
Yeah.
fine, that's fine.
Okay, that's our majority.
No,
Okay.
stay the
All
course
right.
too.
You didn't even ask me.
Well, it was over.
It didn't count.
It was over.
Poor guy.
Okay. At the last meeting, the 2 high school students asked about the minimum voting age.
Yes.
In the meantime, I've done a little bit of research. I've contacted the Greene County Board of Elections, Secretary of State's office, and the Village of Granville. That's where this was introduced earlier this year, or a similar request was made. The Board of Elections basically said they would just have to make some modification to their software to allow this, and basically, because they would only be able to vote on City of Bellbrook issues. They wouldn't be able to, so it'd be council and levy would be the only 2 things that they'd be able to vote on. Or charter amendments, I suppose, in the future. So they would probably, they have a way now to make exception ballots so that it's a paper ballot so anyone who is an exception, they automatically sort of flag them and make them do a paper ballot, and then they count them separately by hand. So they didn't seem to have any problem with doing it. They would have to make some software changes. Secretary of State didn't really give me a whole lot, basically said, we don't do anything with this. The Village of Granville sort of confirmed what I thought, which was it would require a charter amendment. That's what they had done the research. They put the high school students, sort of told them to go and do some more research and then they haven't heard back from me. So that's where that stood. Right now, I'm waiting on an opinion from the municipal attorney, basically summarizing the research that I've had, but I want it from the municipal attorney. I know talking to Mr. Derrico, which was the one student there, he would like this is his desire, is to have a charter amendment proposed on the May 8th ballot. To get that, I think it's May 8th. It would have to be filed by February 7th. So to do that, there would have to be, this would have to move fairly quickly, I guess. It would have to be introduced at the December 11th meeting and approved at the January 7th meeting. That would have 30 days to be effective, and there it would meet the February 7th deadline to accomplish that. So that's where it stands right now. I don't know if council has any input on this, assuming that a charter amendment is what's required. If council has any desire to put it on the, I'll say, the fast track to do it, or is just put an ordinance out there at some point in the future, right, that I can do whatever. I should have the attorney's opinion within this week or by early next week, so that for the December 11th meeting, an ordinance could be introduced to amend the charter.
I personally think I would not fast track anything. It's being too rushed now. And, you know, if they haven't gotten back to us, I mean, they can, well, it would be a public hearing. We could put it out there. One is, I guess we wouldn't even have to introduce it, depending on how everyone felt on it, of course. So I don't know. Nick, what do you think?
I think we should move it along. I mean, I don't know, I can't see any negatives to this. I mean, getting young people involved in the election process, considering the, you know, relatively poor voter turnout that you seem to get nationally and locally. I mean, timing of it, you know, I don't, is there some reason why he has to have it done by May 8th?
Well, it is one, I should have mentioned that, is he graduates.
I was going to say, he graduates and...
And then he's not going to be here. So, I mean, if to put his preference would be put it on while he is still here in Bellbrook. He's going to be going off to school and not going to be around.
I think
so.
we put it on before he leaves and give him credit for some, you know, something he doesn't have to read about from wherever college he's at.
Boris?
I'm for it. I think it's something that the country's kind of failed in a way about civics and government. And I think it'd be a good way to get people interested.
Mr. McGill?
I'm in favor of lowering the voting age if there's some, you know, ultimate means there that is good for the lowering of the age itself. But I think that a fast tracking, you know, we have other issues that are on our plate right at this point and may take, you know, more precedent than this.
Ms. Milstetter?
If we can do it for the May 8th ballot, I'd like to see it done. I agree that other things have a higher priority if it can't be done, but if we have to do it, we don't know yet if we have to have a charter amendment, do we?
I'm fairly certain we do, but no, we don't have. I guess that's what I'm waiting on right now is the official attorney's opinion.
Okay. If it can be done, I don't have a problem with it.
Mrs. Seeger Lawson?
I am to be the naysayer again, but I'm not for it. Just because I think that kids that are under 18 really don't have a good sense of what their vote means and how it would impact the city and how it may impact the property taxes that their parents pay because they don't pay property taxes. And the kids also wouldn't have the impact of putting in a city council member who may not have their parents' best interest at heart. So I think 18's fine. I think I'm glad they're interested. I would be okay if their vote, if we took their vote and we made it public and we said, well, the people under 18 believe this, and we said that's good information. But as long as it doesn't count towards whether or not a property tax passes or fails.
Mr. Schweller?
I kind of agree with Don. I wouldn't want to fast track this because I'm concerned that our December 11th meeting is going to be about the budget. And I think that's going to be kind of a critical meeting for us to make sure that, number one, we understand what's out there, and for the people watching at home to make sure they can understand what's going on with our budget, because that is our biggest area of focus right now. And I think December 11th we'll be laser focused on that, and I would hate to see something else sidetrack that conversation or that discussion.
I guess my opinion is unlikely that I would support this. I think it's important for the people to make their decisions. There's numerous reasons why, is that we have enough issues with residents and people not getting information or pursuing information, just going to the ballot box. What do you think it would be like for a 16 or 17-year-old? I am in favor, if it's something we agree on, we could put it on the ballot. Who knows how that would come out? But I'm not in favor of fast tracking it, just because of all the other issues. And then the other one is what happens if someone else wants to change something else, mayor's court or something else, and we fast track this. So it's a city charter issue, and I would also hold that we have those every 10 years for a reason, to modify the city charter, and we set up a committee to look at all those issues, not just, two people coming in saying they want something changed, and us at city council deciding to put it on the ballot, where the committee of people within the city recommend it to city council, and then we put it on the ballot. So that's my opinion.
When's the next charter review?
Right now, we're technically 3, and definitely not fast track, probably not in favor. I couldn't remember. And what do I need to do here? I mean, obviously.
No, I'm just looking for direction. I mean,
Yeah, I know.
This wasn't a binding vote. I was just trying
Yeah.
to decide if you, I will get the attorney's
I
opinion.
think we move forward, we can just, I don't know that we're gonna wanna introduce it me personally, we'd have to probably decide on council if we're gonna want to introduce it at the November 11th meeting.
I'm not for
Or
the fast.
December 11th.
I'm not for the fast track. I would be open for,
And I guess fast track to me, it was not, maybe that's not the right word. I mean, it's putting it in a process that it could be on the May 8th ballot. If we want to put something on, those are the deadlines. I wouldn't take it as fast track, meaning we're going to shortcut. We're not going to pass it as an emergency. If we truly wanted to fast track it, we could pass it at the second meeting in January as an emergency ordinance, and it could be on the ballot in May. I'm not trying to shortchange the process. I'm just trying to say whether you want it on the May ballot, which was their request because of, really it was a desire because he was going to still be here at that point, versus waiting until November. Or waiting until the next charter review. We're probably halfway through the charter. It was probably 2012 was the last charter review.
Yeah.
So we want it on the ballot, basically. Is that, or most of us
I
want it?
probably
You-
would
you
vote
don't want
against
on-
it, but and let it go
Does
to
it-
the charter review. I'm just not sure why we're
Okay,
making
but-
an example, but
There's people, there's
I also-
councilmen that say it should be on the ballot, just a matter of the timing then.
yes.
I mean, I don't know why we just wouldn't get it on the ballot. I don't know that's gonna take an inordinate amount of time to put on there, but that's just my opinion.
The other thing is you have to decide, what's the right age. I mean, they're actually talking about increasing the driving age, so kids wouldn't be able to drive at 16. So, does that follow the driving? And if so, why? I mean, it isn't really related.
Well, I
to-
guess the whole idea is that we can have these discussions through that process. I mean, it's not real, no one knows where, the whole idea is to have it an open public discussion doing this. So, of course, we could never introduce it also. So it's not for us to decide now, it's just really decide, should we move forward and get it on the May ballot, or attempt to get it on the May ballot? Because it may not even get that far. No one knows.
The process is introduction. If it doesn't get approved to be introduced, then it doesn't ever have a public hearing. If it gets approved to be introduced, then we have a public hearing. And if the public hearing doesn't pass, then it doesn't go on the ballot. So there's 2 votes of council before it would ever be put on the charter, or be on the ballot to amend the charter.
But it doesn't sound like there's enough people that would want it on the ballot in May anyway, so there's no point in going through that whole public hearing and introduction process anyway.
That's
So
why
why don't we just,
That's what I'm
why don't we just say
asking
yes,
It's
it's gotta
our
go on the
decision, I
ballot,
guess.
but not right now? I mean, I don't see prolonging. If we're not gonna do it in May, then let's not do it in May. Let's do it for November and talk about it this spring or something.
Who wants to discuss further putting it on the May 11th? Yes or no? Are you a yes, Nick?
I'm a yes.
Okay. Forrest?
no.
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 Okay.
No.
There's your
There,
decision.
there's the decision.
Well,
As a-
I
as a
will-
formal-
That's hard.
I will still get the,
Still work on getting this.
I'll get
the
the,
opinion of the law director.
right.
Yeah, we have a bunch of stuff we don't even know about.
Right, I'll get that, and then I
That's-
will share that with the two gentlemen that were here, that council needs more information before they are willing to
Right.
even consider making this amendment, and we'll go from there.
Well, I really do think it's a legitimate concern to try to rush this and not even having the opinion on the law director and the
But that's the only,
meetings at two.
that's the only information we need, though, is the opinion of the law director.
Well, how to write it. I mean, we, I guess, copy off of, you know, you gotta have the
Again,
legislation.
I think it's a relatively straightforward, I mean,
Okay.
with the exception of what the age is.
Yep.
It's a relatively straightforward, is for, to be a qualified elector within the city of Bellbrook, you must be X years of age.
Period.
And I mean, that's, so I don't think the language is difficult, it's more the concept of whether that's what council wants to allow the voters to have.
Desired, yeah.
So, okay, I'll get the legal opinion from the attorney, and then we can go from there. Let's see, on Friday, December 15th, State Rep Rick Perales is going to have an open house here in council chambers from 1 to 3 p.m. The first hour was going to be more of an open house, questions, answers, and then he had wanted to talk about the state capital budget. There are projects that you can have inserted into the state capital budget if it meets certain criteria. In my quick glance at that, I don't think we have any projects that qualify for anything like that. So I'm not sure that matters, but he will be here on Friday, December 15th from 1 to 3 p.m. And finally, I mentioned it earlier, the Upper Hillside project is out to bid right now. The bid opening is scheduled for December 12th, and then council will act on the contract, assuming we have a good bids in early 2018. Construction is scheduled for the summer of 2018. That is all I have.
Any questions for our city manager before we move on? If not, committee report, service.
No official report tonight, but just wanted to remind people not to rake your leaves into the streets. And also, if we have a snow event, please make sure that you do not park on the street to the extent possible so that the snow plows can get through.
Great. Safety,
No report, man.
finance and audit.
Mayor, I just want to congratulate the city manager, finance director, Mark, for what he did in getting this Auditor of State Award presentation. It's a big deal, and Mr. Braden went through what it took to get there. He went through some of those things relatively quickly, but the state audit is all about form and not so much about substance. And we had a great example of that tonight. If you look at ordinance number 2017-13, we moved basically $1,038,000, of which one item was $1,040,000, but Mark still had to go through and take that $2,000 difference and break it out amongst 15 different funds. And each one of those funds is very critical, and they look at these things, and, you know, we had adjustments for $572 and $825, and that's what these auditors expect, and that's what they look for. And so the task, I think, is an incredibly tedious task. There's no such thing as materiality, and these auditors dig and dig and dig, and to some extent, they're on the state budget a little bit, and I don't think they're worried about how much time it takes and how efficient they are, so I think they're putting through a lot of motions. And I think Mark does an excellent job on the books here, and we've got the information ready for these guys, and it's more of a kind of an ongoing nuisance, because they come in for a couple days, they leave, they come, they go, they come, they go, and again, we just got the report done this year in, late October, they promised it in August, and we do everything we can to move it along, but this whole process takes a lot of detailed, as he termed it, accounting excellence, but a lot of detailed knowledge, and also a lot of patience working with them, so congratulations to you and your staff.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Mike. Community affairs?
Nothing that just Christmas in the park is coming up, but I don't have the date.
I was
so-
getting ready to pull it up. I'm thinking, what's a week from Saturday?
The 9th or
Ninth.
something?
I think it's the 9th, because I'm not going to be here, and I think that's. when it-
Yeah, it's 5 to 7. It's on Facebook. It's at a bunch of different places. If I find it for the end of the meeting, I'll.
Okay, that's the only thing I wanted to mention is that.
Old business, new business, Ohio Division of Liquor Control, Notice A, Notice of Application for a Change of LLC Membership Interest. This is Marathon.
Yeah, and we get these, and quite honestly, sometimes we wonder why we put them on the agenda, but this specifically asked whether council wants a hearing on this. This is just literally, it appears to be transferring from a individual to an LLC or something like that. So we have no issues with Marathon and their liquor license, so we have no concerns, but it's a requirement of the state, so if you want to have a hearing, you can tell us, otherwise we will send it back that we don't want a hearing.
Another issue of form.
Yes,
Any,
exactly.
The
Absolutely.
only note I will make is you need to stop by the chicken place inside the Marathon. It is
Yes.
really, really good.
Is it
Oh,
good?
yeah?
It is good.
It is really good. So Andy will appreciate I said that. Any concerns at all on council?
Yeah.
And
Okay, so seeing none, we're not moving on that. Open discussion. Mr. Edwards,
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
on down the line. Mr. Greenwood?
I'd just like to thank Mark and his awards and the way he presents a budget to us and we work on it and make sure that everybody fully understands. And he breaks it down and makes it fairly simple, so I really appreciate that, Mark.
Thank you.
Mr. McGill?
Yeah, I echo those same comments, that it's very difficult to put a budget together for a city this size, and to come away with an award like that, congratulations to you.
Thank you.
I echo those same sentiments, and if you can make me understand a budget, you're doing it well.
Yeah, good job, thanks.
Mr. Schweller?
And keep in mind too, the budget for 2018 will be approved by the December the 11th meeting barring any problems. And a lot of times these budgets are done as, if you watch the federal government, it's called continuing resolutions, which never get done, but a lot of them are done very late in the year and they're done as emergency ordinances in 2018. We've consistently gotten ours done in 2017, year in advance, so we're well in shape for the January 1, 2018.
Yep. Without emergency ordinances, and I believe there was a time frame that we had in the past where Mr. Schlockheck was not here that had happened.
That's right.
So, I do not have anything. Anyone in our audience? Louis? Louis shaking no. Does any member on council have anything else to come before us at this meeting of City Council this evening?
No, Mayor?
Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned.